What's going on, Vapor fans? Welcome back to the Straight Vault. I know you guys have been waiting for a long time for this. So today we're going to be talking about a special battery that has been sent to me for review. This is going to be the Tesiyi 2600 40 amp battery. Now, I know that you guys have probably seen a lot of different reviews and mixed reviews and reports about this battery, but I will give you the real scoop of this one. So you guys ready to get your inner nerd on? Absolutely. Let's go. So before we begin, I want to give a big shout out to my buddy Dawn over at Ador eliquid, adoreliquid.com. Let's go check out her website. I gotta tell you guys real quick, okay, previous to me trying Ador eliquid, I gotta be super honest, I did not really know too much about like what was good juice versus like bad juice. I know there were certain juices that I didn't really like, and then certain juices that, like, you know, I just thought was okay and stuff like that, and then stuff that like I would normally vape. And for the most part, I just felt as if like it was an opinion thing and it was all really subjective until I went ahead and tried Ador eliquid. Okay, now with that being said, I gotta be honest, the website looks like doo-doo, madam. I gotta change things around, but it is fully functional, and I gotta tell you, what they base their product around is the idea that like we put all our heart and effort into the juice, not the labeling and not the website. So everything is very fully functional, and the flavors of these things, it's really up to you to decide whether you like them or not. However, I gotta tell you, right, everything vapes very smooth. You know what I mean? So this is exactly what I'm talking about when I say like, wow, I now understand the difference between like really good quality juice versus like, you know, commercial hype juice that might not all be there, and then they spend all their money into the advertisement. You guys already know I am slammed with Suicide Buddy stuff, but now that I've tried this thing, I gotta say that for over a year now, I have worked my way down into a zero nic vapor. Okay, I still enjoy vaping very much. I am still addicted to the act of it. However, with the Ador stuff, I can vape nic without feeling as harsh as if I just used I just went ahead with some other brand. Does that make sense? Does it, with the you know how certain juices, even though it's a 3, even though it's a 6, it's not like, you know, super high in nicotine, but the moment that you vape it, it's either very harsh on the inhale or it's very harsh on the exhale. One or the other is going to leave you with that kind of like scratchy throat thing, but Ador eliquid actually doesn't do that. So definitely guys, check her out when you have the chance. So let's do a quick dive down and take a look at this battery. So here's the box over here, and it says IMR 18650. Okay, so lithium manganese. So I really think it's funny how they got the IMR and the lithium manganese, because that's kind of saying IMR manganese. So it's a little bit redundant. Okay, little authenticity code over here, so a little scratch and check. I'm really not even going to bother checking because this is supposedly sent to me directly from Tesiyi themselves. So let's open this little guy up and then take a look at what's inside over here. So black and yellow wrapper, wrapped pretty nicely. It looks as if it's 2 layers almost. I don't know. I'm not going to cut this up to see what's going on, because you guys already know how I feel about like cutting up batteries. Cutting up batteries, it only helps if you know exactly what company it came from and you have a matching battery coming from the exact same plant. You guys got to understand that, like, you know, whether this thing underneath is a Samsung, an LG, or Sony, or whatever, they all come from many various different plants. For instance, Samsung SDI has SDIEM, which is a Malaysian plant, versus SDI, which is the Korean plants. And for both areas, there's a lot of different you know, factories in Southeast Asia as well as Korea, so both North and South Asia. bit. So yeah, and because of that, the markings could come out very, very differently in many, many different ways. Okay, you guys might have seen a video once upon a time with, you know, people just cutting up Samsung 25R batteries. Now, I won't graph this right away, but I just want to show you once again really quick, right? You see the markings over here seem similar, right? But then when we go over here, this SMA3 and then something like this goes to show these are both Samsung 25R batteries, and then they show completely different markings on the inside, and as well as the bottom they have like different stamps as well that I'm not going to, you know, get too deep into, but you get my point. Cutting up batteries is a clue, but it is not it's not really a solid definition of like, oh, this definitely means that, because who's to say that one of these is a 25R and then the other one is a 20R? You get what I'm saying? Okay, let's move on. So looking at the battery over here, immediately laughable with the 40 amp. You know, different people have different gimmicks in order to try to sell something. I thought it was really funny how this box is going to say IMR over here, and then this is going to say ICR over here. So really, Tesiyi, which is it? Which is it? Okay. Another thing real quick is that, like, we got to start debunking the 3.7 nominal voltage over here. Okay. When you're dealing with hydrate batteries, whether it's ICR, IMR, INR, it doesn't really matter what it is, okay? Most likely, most batteries are 3.6 volts. Where does the 3.7 volt come from? It comes from the idea of older architecture batteries, like the really, really big Panasonics. You know, from the older days and stuff, the NCR 18650B and other things like that, you know, the PF model, these things were really, really big batteries of lower amperage, and they have a higher nominal voltage in them. Not so much this stuff over here, okay? All of these batteries hover around the 3.6 area. So everything from like your 30Q to 25Rs to HB6s to, you know, VTC3s, VTC4s, they're all 3.6 volts, okay? So what happens when a battery is truly 3.7 volts? Well, it could charge higher, actually. Because it has a greater nominal voltage, it charges actually past 4.2 safely. It can actually go all the way up to 4.35. This is fact, okay? It's just a different kind of setting, and it's not really around anymore, okay? Of course, this is a PF, this is a newer model, but in the older days with our 18650B models and stuff, then yeah, you were able to do that, but not so much anymore. And it doesn't change or affect performance or anything, because a lot of these batteries back then, they didn't really have the amperage to support for what we need for vaping right now. So you know, do not go back in time to try to search for these batteries and to use Panasonics and stuff like that, because you know, there's only like one battery by Panasonic that's really rated for vaping, and that's the one that they purchased from Sanyo, which is the GA model, and for that I only give it a Type A rating. Okay, it's only a 10 ampere. So coming back to this, you know, right away, it's I don't like it. You know, I don't like you know, BS on top of BS and like witches. I'm very picky with this kind of stuff, all right? So with that said, let's go over to their website and see if we can find a little bit more bro science. So in the past, I've always talked about like real science and the bro science over here. So we're at the Tesiyi website. Let's scroll down a wee bit, and then we see like all sorts of things over here. Okay, this is their testing and their charts and et cetera, et cetera. And immediately, right, what I want to say is that like, although it's possible, but highly unlikely, okay? If you guys go ahead and see graphs that look like it was done with a crayon, chances are they're probably not real graphs, okay? Especially when your graphs are all like, you know, with dirty power and stuff like that. It's like wavy, like all over the place. I really am truly irritated by this thing because I can't get it to stay still. So what happens is that, you know, to see 10 amp, 15 amp, blah, 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 whatever, like it just keeps on going on. Now, I found this one super redundant, right? And I'll tell you why. Because look, the green line over here is supposed to be the Tesiyi power, right? However, sorry, the screen just keeps on changing. Let's go back to the 40 amp. But if you look at 3.6 volt over here, try to imagine where the 3.4 and the 3.2 is. Now, we all know that in vaping devices, the 3.2 is the cutoff. So basically what's happening over here is that, like, if this thing was actually, you put a 40 amp load on it, it would just go immediately into the cutoff, and then like the moment you fire it, it's just gonna say weak battery or dead battery, or it's not gonna fire at all. That makes zero sense whatsoever. Okay. Furthermore, if you take a look at the bottom over here on the right side, they went with discharge time. Okay, with a discharge time setting, etc., and stuff like that. I don't know exactly what their set parameters are, but what I can tell you is that on my equipment, however, I don't go by time. We go by watt hours passed, because it's whatever watt hours that has passed, right, transitions over to real time, not the other way around. Does that kind of make sense? It's for instance, right? Every time you buy a device and then you say, well, how much vape time am I going to get out of this? Well, it depends on a lot of things, right? You could have a simple 1,000-watt device, but then you have like 12 milligram strength nicotine in it, right? So you take like, you know, a couple of puffs, you're done. You're sick. You're satisfied, right? Or you could have like a 1.5, you know, milligram strength in there, and then you just go ahead and vape all day. But depending on what your wattage setting is, plus the size of the battery, is going to determine watt hours passed, and that watt hours that has passed will translate over into real time. This is exactly why every shop owner, every shopkeep, every store, whatever, right? They might give you like a roundabout number or whatever, but they'll always end up telling you the same thing. It depends what your settings are. Okay, so further moving on over here. Okay, this is something else that I'm going to call bro science on immediately, right? And here's the reason why. My good buddy Zach from Vaping Moderation has once said, right, if you can't dazzle them with knowledge, then you just baffle them with BS. Okay, so I'm gonna do something right here, right away. Okay, so for you guys of what I see that you guys might not catch right away, which is before testing voltage 3.68. Can somebody in the audience tell me why that's important? Because the whole point, right, is to take the batteries. I believe we all do this the same way, whether or not you have a battery analyzer, or if you're just going to put it in a mech mod and see if you could taste the difference, right? The first thing that we're going to do is remove the packaging of this thing and then throw it on our chargers and then charge it up to full and then use them some way, somehow, whether it's in the analyzer or in our devices. So what does it matter what the initial voltage of this thing was when you first take it out? As a battery seller myself, if I went downstairs with a multimeter and then just, you know, measured all of my you know, batteries that are in inventory, right, everything is going to come out to like, you know, 3.68, 3.65, 3.6. It's all going to be like somewhere roundabout over there. You know, I don't understand exactly why that kind of information is important, yet it's all here put into a chart to dazzle you. You know what I mean? And that's what really super bugs me about this thing. So, all right, enough with their information and their charts and whatever, okay? Let's go over to the battery analyzer and find out the truth about this stuff and get to the bottom of everything already. Graph time. Okay, children, this is the favorite part of the segment. We're going to do some graph time here. So, already, instead of like, you know, going through the files and stuff and then wasting time, I've decided to already pull up the most relevant couple of batteries to compare it to, and let's just start talking about stuff. Before we begin, I want to mention, right, that there is no machine out there. There is nothing out there, right, that like, you know, you just touch a positive and a negative wire together or whatever, and then it will give you the exact amperage number, okay? Amperages are done through rigorous testing by companies, okay? And what happens is that basically it's like, you know, testing maximum strength medicine, right? Figure out what's going to kill me and then back it off a little bit. There you go, maximum strength aspirin. I'm just kidding. So what it's more like is that they go ahead and they make a batch of batteries, right? And then they test them, and then they take, like, you know, whatever is more of the A grade bins and stuff like that, and then go through more torture tests, right? Put it on the temperature probe, see how much it can handle, put a lot of power in it into charging and discharging, and see what makes it pop. Right? Of course, we're not going to do that as civilians. I'm not going to have batteries vent all over my desk and stuff. But what I can tell you is that what we do is that we take things that are commonly known as certain amperages, right? And we use them as our benchmark. Okay, and from there, what we do is that compare it to other batteries, and then from there we do an estimate. Okay, so that's how we get to our conclusion. So the first thing we're going to do is show you guys the line of the Tesiyi battery. I decided to go ahead and use a black line because this thing is black and yellow, but a HE4 is also yellow, so we're just going to use the black line. Okay, so this thing supposedly is a 40 amp battery. I disagree, and I will show you why I hideously disagree with the idea of it even being remotely close to a 40 amp battery. First, we're going to go ahead and compare it to like some other stuff. Okay, so let's bring it over to the coveted LGHE2, right? LGHE2 has been around forever. It's used in MXJOs, sub-ohm cells. It's used in a lot of EFES batteries and stuff. I'm pretty sure there's still a couple of companies that are still, you know, rewrapping LGHE2s and, you know, trying to say that they're 35 or 40 amps or whatever. But anyways, let's unhide this test and let me show you what it compares to against the LGHE2. So what is exactly this power profile test over here? Okay, other than the fact that you could tell that the red has done better than the black, what happens is that, let's say we take this current over here. This is a point in the graph that it has simulated 10 amps, and when it simulated 10 amps, it's about how much voltage the battery is still holding on to, meaning you know, how much voltage drop there is. The more of a drop, it suggests that, like, the less current that it can handle, because it'll just drop down very quickly. So if we took, like, say, a 6 amp battery, a 10 amp battery or whatever, and then graphed it to, you know, 20 amps or whatever, it would just have a very dismal dropping curve. Okay, while other batteries that are capable of handling these kinds of amperages or whatever is going to do a very nice, steady holding up curve. Okay, so let me shut up and show you the LGHE4. Okay, so you can see that the LGHE4 has done a little bit better. I've said this over a year ago that the HE4 is the new king of the hill compared to the HE2 until the Samsung 25R came out. But the thing is this, right? I'm never going to go ahead and say this battery is crap, I hate this battery, I like that battery, because the world of batteries and it's not subjective. It's about numbers. Okay, so is the HE2 good? Absolutely. I still think it's a good battery. HE4 good? Absolutely. Still a very good battery. Now, for most of us out there, we're putting it in regulated devices. And when you put it in regulated devices, it's going to pump out whatever resistance it reads. Okay. So with that being said, batteries just being, like, you know, a hairline different or whatever, as long as it has enough current to support what the chip needs, then this battery is good. You know what I mean? It's kind of like taking your Regents exam. You know, as long as you make that 65 points or whatever, it's as good as 100. You actually don't need 100 in order to pass. All you need is the 65. You know, and then it's pass is pass, fail is fail. It's like that. It's not like if it was in a regulated device, or an unregulated device or a mechanical device, where you will taste the difference because there's no regulation. Okay, so let me move on a little bit more and then show you the doo-doo brown battery. Okay, so the LG HG2 over here, and this very deep curve like this. Okay, so here's where I want to make my point of what makes a lot of sense here, okay? I've said this over and over and over again, okay? The HG2 batteries are not 20 amp batteries. Okay, you don't believe me? It's okay. Normally, I don't approve of doing the taste test. Okay, however, in this case, it's because it's such a significant trade-off, right? That you could go ahead and any one of you out there, if you own both the Doodoo Brown batteries and the Samsung 25R or an HE4, right? Then go ahead and pick up your mech mod and then vape them both side by side, and you tell me if you can't tell a significant difference. Now, once you notice, right, that you're getting more heat off of the HE4 or the 25R in the atomizer, I don't mean more heat on the battery, I mean more heat in the atomizer, okay? So it's hitting harder, then how can you go ahead and then say that, like, you know, they're both 20 amp batteries? You see what I'm saying? If I take away the Tesiyi battery and we were just to compare LG to LG real quick, right? You see what I'm saying? The red line and the yellow line are benchmark 20 amp batteries. So this brown line over here, which is supposed to be the LG HG2, exactly what is this thing? So what is it? It's one or the other. Either the HE2 and the HE4 are more than 20 amps, and the HG2 is a 20 amp, or like somebody's overrated and somebody's underrated, right? Okay, so the Tesiyi falls right in between this. Now keep in mind that the LG HG2 is a 3000 milliamp hour battery, okay? And that has been proven true. It is absolutely a 3000 milliamp battery. And for that, we're going to go ahead and open some new files over here, and I'm going to go ahead and show you the LG HG2, right, exactly as we said, and then this is the discharge curve over here. So 2.908, okay, 96.9%. I still deem this as an A bin, not an A plus, but definitely an A bin battery that you're getting the 3000 mAh out of. These are just my personal parameters that I drain things at half an amp down to 2.8. There are releases of stuff that they drain at like 0.2 or 0.1, but I find that like just ridiculous. That's way too low, right, for a reasonable drain. And then they drain it all the way down to like 2.5 instead of 2.8. So would suggest that this curve might give you like, you know, that 100 milliamp hour more to make it all the way to 3000. However, that doesn't explain like really solid batteries like, you know, the HD2 and the HD2, the purple HD2 battery, where you get 102% out of it. And should I have gone ahead and then, you know, brought that to 2.5, then I don't know, maybe it would have been a 2200 mAh battery. What the hell, right? So really, you got to understand what people's parameters are and their interpretations of this parameter, and that's how they got to their scientific conclusions. Okay, not so much the crazy bro science stuff that I showed you before, where, you know, we're just listing out the numbers of the battery before it's charged. Like, what? Why is that even important? All right, so moving on over here. Okay, I want to go ahead and prove why I said the Tesiyi battery is kind of sort of right in between. So let's go over to the straightforward battery tests over here, and then this is the Tesiyi, and I'm going to show you the half amp discharge on this one. Okay, so half amp discharge on this thing, 107.2%. Wow, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know, because I don't know exactly what battery is underneath this wrapper, and that bugs me. That bugs me a lot, and I'll tell you why. Because when I go over here and I click on this thing, I get the amp hour of this thing is 2.788. Okay, and what's the problem? The problem is, right, was this battery supposed to be a 3000 milliamp battery, and now I'm just seeing like a C-rated, like a B negative C-rated bin 3000 mAh battery? Or is this an A bin 2800 mAh battery? Or is this something else? I don't know exactly where to put my finger on it, okay? But I will go ahead and say that, like, well, what I did get out of this thing was about 2,800 milliamp hours, okay? And when you're talking about 2,800 milliamp hours, right, it's too big of a battery to be 40 amps. Does that make sense? I understand that, like, with new chemistries, new materials and stuff like that, things get improving or whatever. It's not going to be a drastic improvement, but we will nudge up by, 50 points of milliamp hours, or 2 more amps here and there and stuff like that. This is all, like, within reason. But when you're telling me that you got a 40 amp battery at 2,800 mach, come on, this is just ridiculous, right? So, as we saw with the line curves before, right? So let me pull up the overlay for the HE2 battery over here. I'm sorry. Let's open this and then do this one, right? And then let's overlay the Tesiyi battery, right? Which is over here. Excuse me. And PowerPoint. Okay. So the HG2 battery being a 3,000 mAh, and then the Tesiyi battery being a 2,800 mAh, it makes sense that this thing is going to be rocking like a hairline better than the HG2 would. Okay, so let's go back over to FaceTime and let me give you my final thoughts about this battery. So after checking out graph time and stuff, right, we've concluded a couple of things. This thing is benchmarked somewhere in between the HG2 and the HE2 battery, right? So it's right in between what I think is something of a 15 amp battery and a 20 amp battery. So we could safely say that this thing is maybe about, like, 17 or 18 amps. As far as the capacity of this thing, 2,800 mAh. Okay, so where does that put this battery at all? Okay, it puts it exactly in between what I think a B class or a C class battery is. The B class being the 3,000 mAh 15 amp battery, and the C class being a 2,500 mAh 20 amp battery. Okay, and it's really all about what you need. Do you need a little bit more amperage? Then stick with your 25 hours. Do you need a little bit more vape time? Then stick with your 30 Qs. Okay, but when it comes to this, which is exactly right in between, I find this so tailored specific, right? So that, like, unless you're doing, like, your Ohm's law and stuff like that, and then you see, like, exactly what you need, right? Exactly what you need is right in between. So the fact that it's right in between the B and the C, right? You guys kind of have to sort of decide for yourself, is there a place in vaping for this little guy? You know what I mean? Because for those of you out there who are already used to using your 25 hours and building, for your 25 hours and stuff, this thing's not going to be powerful enough for you. For those of you out there who are enjoying your 30 Qs and HG2s, life capacity, this thing is not going to make it for you guys either. So I don't know. I don't know if there's room for a battery right in between B and C. It's just so tailored specific. You see what I'm saying? But I'm not going to say that it's a bad battery. I'm just going to say that it's an in-between battery, okay? So that's it for the Straight Volt. Hope you guys have really enjoyed this episode, and I will see you guys in the next. For more information on batteries and all things vape, please click on the banner and visit PegasusVaporAcademy.com. So before we begin, I want to give a big shout out to my buddy Don over at